All right, and welcome to Teach Progress, teachprogress.org. Today we're going to first talk about how bowling can make you feel better about the coming regime. Uh, Meaning maintenance theory is this psychological theory that says that when expectations or meaning is violated or lost, you can offset the feelings of that violation by fluidly compensating with something else. So, for example, if you feel like, and I don't know why you would, fascism is going to come to destroy your country, then if you throw black balls at white pinheads with red ties bowling, it will help you feel better. Now, I'm not saying it should keep you from being ready to help de radicalize the world, which is the point of what we're doing here. But it sure can help you get your emotions together so that you can be more effective in what you're trying to do. So, Teach Progress 101. Here's what we do. We try and discover the mistakes in thinking that we make. Now, when we use these ideas, they aren't always a bad idea. Sometimes there's good reasons to use them, but when we see them, we should say, is this distracting us? Is it making us think in a way we don't intend to think? I'll give an example. I think sunk cost is in there. A traditional example of a sunk cost is a relationship. Like if you've been with somebody for 20 years and you find something that might make you happier, like not being with them, should you just give it up? Well, the sunk cost fallacy often leads people to stick with it, even though they're less happy. But sometimes that sunk cost really does have meaning to you. It's really worth it to try and make it work and go to counseling, for example. So that is just to be clear, these mistakes in thinking are mistakes and not because they're just so obviously wrong, but because sometimes we really need to rely on these things to get by. All right. So teach progress, and we will go over them. Confirmation bias. It's true because I believe it. Confirmation bias is very simply the tendency of people to look out into the world to find things that confirm what they already believe. And almost all of us do this almost all of the time. To get smarter, though, we have to seek things that disconfirm what we believe. Attribution error. If they did it, they caused it. This is the tendency to think that people are responsible for the situations that they find themselves in. This is often obviously not true if you ask, well, if this group of people is poor, was it because they had a poor education or because they didn't work hard enough in school? Okay, well, why did they not work hard enough in school? Oh, they had a poor education. You see, the context swamps the content. The exact same will to take responsibility will lead to very different outcomes given different opportunities. Same thing with running. If you have a shoe that falls apart, you're going to think that person's a lesser runner, even though it was the shoe. Substitution error. I call this the basic human error. When we want to know an answer to something really, really badly, we will take a different answer that kind of sounds similar, right? Accepting an answer to another question. I see this all the time, and with some of the smartest people out there accepting the wrong answer because it kind of sounds the same. A classic situation is we want to know how much money are we going to have at the end of the year? So we go with how much money we had at the end of last year. And that kind of feels like the right thing. And digging into the books would be really hard. So we just kind of guess. False equivalence. Two things seem the same, but they aren't. And this is very common when you're trying to say like both sides of an issue. Well, where the line is drawn on a both sides issue is often wherever the loudest, most extreme person drew a line and said, this is my side. That means the loudest and most extreme person is often trying to draw a false equivalence between their side and everyone else. It doesn't mean it's, and it feels right to like be moderate, feels thoughtful, but it isn't really what's going on. Mott and Bailey. If you've ever been in a debate room, you have experienced this firsthand. The key word to give this one away is all I'm saying is. Here, you invisibly go from an indefensible argument to being agreeable. For example, we had someone say, well, we need to deport everyone that is here, both illegally and who came in under immigrant visas. And when pushed on it, he responded, all I'm saying is we have trouble with our immigration system. Like, what? That is not all you're saying, buddy.
Yeah.
Zero-sum thinking. If they win, I lose. And if they lose, I win. This is the core of the simplistic thinking that causes the sort of factionalism we often see amongst extremist ideologies. Because it says I don't even need to know how it benefits me. I just know if it hurts them, I'm better. And it's completely wrong. We're all humans in a system. By the way, we're really bad animals. Your claws suck. Your teeth suck. Your fur's no good. Like, you're not a good animal. You do, though, have other humans with you. And that is the real power of humanity. So this zero-sum thinking is just stabbing right at the heart of what makes us human. Black and white. It's all or nothing. If you only see things as categories, as yes or no, good or bad, then you're probably in a really bad position. This is the core of the emotions that underpin and worldview that underpins extremist thinking. This is on my side, this is on their side, that's all there is. You can see this in many different ideologies. The Scientologists are really big on this one. They will say that there's either those who are with them or those who are, quote, suppressive persons. And they have their own devil, their own evil worker in the world called a psychologist. And they don't trust them, and they know they're trying to get at them. Because any psychologist would say, hey, buddy, you're in a cult. So when you start seeing this sort of black and white thinking, you know that you're getting towards extremism. Gish galloping, making many arguments that run away. You make a lot of arguments. You don't care if they're good. You don't care if they're bad. Often a kind of whataboutism. It's a series of red herrings, which we'll go over later, often just to distract, or a series of near arguments that all sort of get around a point. Ultimately, you gish gallop yourself very often when you have incoming knowledge you don't want to take on. So you're like, what about this? What about that? What about this? It keeps you from onboarding what someone has said. And we all do it. The only question is, are we dumb enough when we're actually pressed to keep saying that thing that we did, or to say, oh my gosh, what an opportunity to change my mind. I can be smarter. Correlation and causation. One followed the other, so one caused the other. This, in politics, can be called the mandate of heaven. If things are going well, then it must be the leadership that did it, so keep them. If things are going poorly, then it must be the leadership that did it, so get rid of them. As Mr. Calm said during 2020, Donald Trump, he make the mistake with COVID, so it's going to have to be Joe. Like, I don't think he understood any of the nuance when it came to COVID responses. He just knew Trump, COVID, bad. And this sort of correlation and causation, it makes very little sense. The same thing with inflation also makes no sense, especially when you start looking at other causal relationships. For example, the U.S. did the best amongst the top nations in inflation. All right, argument from incredulity. I can't imagine it, so it can't be true. Now, I'll tell you, this is the most painful for me to think about, because to me, power is the ability to imagine a future. And so if you can take away a future someone can imagine, you have taken away their power. And if someone can't imagine what you're talking about, then they're in a world where they have been disempowered. And so often when we encounter people who have been radicalized, it's because they can't imagine a world where, for example, Joe Biden got 80 million votes, or a world where the whales are dying, a world where I was just talking to a guy today. He said, I can't imagine a world where they actually implement a 20% tariff. And I was like, oh, yeah. I can. I can.
Wait a couple of months.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
wait.
yeah,
Just wait.
You know, there's we should put this there's a bias towards optimism I want to talk about real quick. When I was sitting amongst the faculty during the beginning of COVID, and first off, I had locked myself down 2 weeks earlier than everyone else because, of course, I did. And also, they were sitting there at the end of the spring semester talking about how we'd be back in the fall. And I was just like, what planet are you guys on? What? Yeah. Argument from Inca Julie. Yep. Sunk costs. I've invested too much to quit now. So, as I said, like in a relationship, if you have put 20 years in, you may want to